Hello indie game fans, November was an embarrassment of riches with some of the best indie games of the year, and while there's nothing too crazy or surprising about the list if you've been following along, these are all must-gets in my opinion, beginning with Roboquest, the roguelite first-person shooter with fantastic fast-paced action. You play as a guardian robot that has to battle other robots, having a large variety of weapons to choose from, in addition to fun mobility options. The comic book style cel-shaded art style looks awesome, as are the gun sound effects which pop up on screen, even having additional features like co-op, so there's plenty of fun to be had. I had a pretty good feeling that For the King 2 would do well, since this is the sequel to a roguelite RPG from 2018 that was insanely popular, and within the first month or so, already has a stunning 7,000 Steam reviews, which means that it's selling very well. It looks to bring the tabletop RPG experience into the digital world, with different campaigns that you can go on, having rolling dice affecting things like movement and combat, but has procedural generation of the world to keep things fresh, where if you do fail the campaign, there is some carryover that perhaps might make your next attempt more successful. We don't get many games like Back to the Dawn, so the unique factor is already worth a note, since this is a prison life simulation RPG title with a strong central narrative, which is different from the more sandbox offerings of titles like The Escapists. You play as a journalist who has been framed and thrown into prison, now having to find a way to survive by any means necessary, work jobs, befriend and gain allies in prison and plot your escape, while working together with your lawyer on the outside to unravel this conspiracy. There is a time pressure to the game that revolves around 21 in-game days, and you can lose or fail the game and have to restart, but there's enough content and upgrades that you can experiment with once you get an understanding of the basics to improve your odds the next time around. While it is in early access, the game is completable for the first story of Thomas the Fox, with plans to add a second character with his own storyline and unique scenes, looking to be an excellent title. No surprises here, since Coral Island is about as no-brainer as it can get in the farming sim space, since this is quite the classically designed one of these with all the expected elements that you have come to know and love, only beautifully executed with how well everything feels and looks. There are crops to grow, animals to raise, ore to mine, fish to catch, festivals to attend and NPCs to romance, but add to that a little bit of Southeast Asian flair, an environmentalist theme and mermaids and you get the idea. I have not played all the way through the game since it's a huge time commitment, but apparently there are some complaints of it still feeling unfinished even though it is technically a 1.0 release, with more that can be added to the story and additional features, with there being a 2024 roadmap floating around that has a lot of things on it, so perhaps it's weird to call it a 1.0, but maybe they're going for the Stardew Valley style of constant content updates. The next game from the developers of the roguelite defense deck builder city builder Ratopia is named Ratopia, being an oxygen not included like colony sim but with rats, in which you are leading your people to ensure their survival. You need to ensure that they have enough resources, but must also maintain your defenses against enemies with an adorable look, and is off to a good start in early access. However, developer Castle Games is from South Korea, and being in early access, there might be some room for improvement on the English translation since it is not obvious how certain mechanics work, but I think that they will get there eventually and is still worth keeping an eye on. The bigger, not-so-indie titles have been killing it as well, such as RoboCop Rogue City, a first-person shooter based on the classic movie in which they have nailed the character and the feeling of being an unstoppable Terminator-style character, and was just one of the most surprising releases of the year. Similarly, Last Train Home draws upon a classic title in Company of Heroes, being a scenario-based real-time strategy game in which you're commanding soldiers who are attempting to use an armoured train to get home, but have to battle through enemy territory in order to do so, with soldier and resource management in between battles, using the train as your home base. The video game based on the sci-fi book of the same name is The Invincible, being a narrative adventure game with a mystery to solve and has been well received. YOHANE the PARHELION Blaze in the Deep Blue is a 2D pixel art Metroidvania based on a spin-off anime series in which Japanese developer Inti Creates has really found their footing following the disaster that was Mighty No. 9. The classic indie roguelite returns in a different form in Risk of Rain Returns, the remastered, rebalanced and renewed title that actually adds new stuff and changes things up, in which this was the game that put Hoopo Games on the map, which they snowballed into making Risk of Rain 2 and then cashing out by selling the IP to Gearbox, so it's no longer an indie title but is still great. I'm also happy to report that Stronghold Definitive Edition, the remaster of a 22-year-old game, is good, so get it for a nostalgia hit. Back to indie games with the 1.0 release of Astro Ascent, a pixel art roguelite platformer in which you fight your way out of an astral prison, with of course the zodiac signs serving as powerful guards that you need to battle. Splattercat has called this the best roguelite of 2023, so definitely pay attention, with the minute-to-minute action being great and has plenty of build variety as well. I do prefer the pixel art in cutscenes and portraits as compared to in-game, since the in-game sprites might seem a little unfinished and blobby for lack of a better term, but zoomed out it is fine and is of interest to fans of the genre.
Congratulations, Builder! Your workshop is officially open for business in Sandrock.
One of the most impressive live sim titles is My Time at Sandrock, which impressed in early access and knocked it out of the park with the 1.0 release, being a bigger and better version of their earlier game My Time at Portia, but in a different setting. Instead of being a farmer, you are an apprentice builder slash craftsperson moving to the community of Sandrock to restore it to its former glory, with some interesting main quest lines as well as the expected farming, crafting and relationships, with the combat being surprisingly in-depth for a game like this.
You guys on board.
I told you it was a killer month since we also had the 1.0 release of Backpack Hero, a unique turn-based roguelite RPG with an inventory management twist. Yes, you're collecting various weapons, armor, trinkets and consumables in your backpack, but their positioning, orientation and placement relative to other items affects their effectiveness and leads to some clever strategic choices. The 1.0 release, interestingly, adds meta progression in the form of a town, as well as story mode, which is quite ambitious as compared to its run-based structure in early access, although the option is still there if you just want to play runs, so there's something for everyone here. Like with Blasphemous 2 in August, there's a toss-up between numbers 1 and 2 since it's too early to tell, in which The Last Faith is a grim dark pixel art Metroidvania that is awesome, feeling like Salt and Sanctuary in terms of gameplay, but stopping just short of adding a stamina meter and crossing over into Souls-like territory. However, many of the elements from games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne are represented, from the way the story is ambiguously told to the strange characters that you encounter, not to mention the horrific bosses and enemies that you face. It does have the stereotypical amnesiac protagonist setup, so it's up to you to decipher the story, with it certainly encouraging more aggressive play like Bloodborne and has a fantastic pixel art look as well. Speaking of pixel art, there's something to Tevi that I can't quite put my finger on, since this anime bullet hell Metroidvania is quite the interesting title, which I really need to spend more time with, in which our protagonist is searching for mysterious astral gears and encounters a varied cast of characters along the way. The combat with regular enemies feels like a regular old Metroidvania, but the boss fights is where the bullet hell elements come out, and while intimidating, you should be able to get the hang of it just like any other Metroidvania boss, and it's not an impossible hardcore bullet hell game. You have a lot of options to customize your combat experience due to a Hollow Knight style charm system for additional modifiers. There's biome variety as well as secrets in the environment that rewards exploration, so it took a while, but there have been some really great Metroidvanias this year with more upcoming pixel art games in this video.